Hi friends, it's Lisa Hetrick, illustrator for Gina K Designs, and I'm so grateful you could join me today. I have a fun watercolor floral project that I would like to share with you today using my brand new stamp set with Gina K Designs Hugs and Wildflowers. I'm super excited about this set. I'm going to be sharing some really fun watercolor techniques today, and I'm going to show you the companion die set that comes along that is available with this set as well. Now, you could always fussy cut out the images, but the die set is available to you, and I'll make sure that all of the information is linked up for you. So here's the inks that I'm going to be using today. I've switched this up a little bit. I'm using 4 inks from Gina K. The Dye-Inks, Wild Lilac, Lovely Lavender, Wild Dandelion, and Jelly Bean Green. And I'm going to be playing with these 3 Oxide inks today, Picked Raspberry, Wilted Violet, and Shaded Lilac. And we're going to be doing some watercoloring with all of these inks. I have a piece of watercolor paper, my favorite watercolor paper from B Paper Company, cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 for my base, and that's what I'm going to be working on mostly. And I also have a couple extra pieces for the embellishments that we're going to be creating and the die cuts. I have 2 card bases here in Jelly Bean Green, and I have the Gina K White, and I'm not sure which one I'm going to use, but they're cut to a standard A2 sized card. And I've got some purple tape, some adhesive, and some of the Gina K Designs glue. And I'm also going to be using this water brush from Pentalic. And I have a water brush, a water mister, full of water for some fun techniques that I'm going to show you with the oxides. I've got my tidy towel here because I'm going to make a bit of a mess, and it's perfect for cleaning up the mess. Okay, so we're getting started with the Wilted Violet Distress Oxide ink, and I've just gone ahead and mashed this down onto this white craft mat that I'm working on. So I'm going to go ahead and activate the oxide ink by spritzing it with the mister of water here, and I'm just kind of shielding it from exploding onto the rest of my surface and all of the things. And I'm just putting a nice little coating of water on the watercolor paper as well, and just going to go ahead and smoosh it right into this this lilac color. I absolutely love this lilac color. Now look at the blues. So you get a lot of purples in this oxide, but you get quite a bit of blues that are coming through here too. And it's just so pretty. So I did hit it with a heat tool just to kind of dry it up. And I really like some of the drips that are happening there at the top. So it's still a little bit wet, and I'm wetting it again because I'm going to be stamping into the surface, the wet surface, with the Distress Oxide ink Picked Raspberry. So I'm using 3 of the bloom stamps from the set, and I've kind of pulled into this shot a little bit tighter so that you could see. This is not like perfect stamping, but what I'm doing here is inking up with the oxides, both of the colors here, and stamping into the wet watercolor paper, and when it dries, it's going to give us, it's going to fade back quite a bit, but going to give us that feeling of falling flowers, because at the base of this card here, I want this look and feel that there have been flowers that have kind of fallen, sort of like how the cherry blossoms have fallen, or when lilac blooms start to fall to the ground in the spring. So just kind of creating that look and feel of when the flowers start to fall and you get that little ethereal look and feel. So creating that with the oxides and keeping it wet and just kind of stamping into wet. Okay, so I'm moving on to create the embellishment pieces, and we're going to start out with the elongated branch piece that has that bloom on there. So I'm going to stamp this out 3 or 4 times, and I'm going to show you how I'm mixing up the color with the inks on the stamp. So I'm going to start with the Jelly Bean Green and ink up the whole branch element. And then I'm going to take my finger and just kind of wipe off the ink off of that bloom. And then using the Wild Lilac, I just go ahead and add that color so you can get that two-tone color without trying to use a positioner. You're just using it all in one motion. So I'm going to go ahead and do this again with the Wild Dandelion, which I love that color. And I'm going to use the Jelly Bean Green again, use my finger and just kind of wipe away that bloom and add some Wild Dandelion, except for the fact that I forgot to wipe away the bloom. So I'm going to go ahead and do it again. And I might just go ahead and use that green piece for another project. So I'm inking up the Jelly Bean Green and then wiping that away and then adding the Wild Dandelion and stamping that down on the watercolor paper. So you can see that the watercolor paper is taking the Gina K Dye-Inks really, really well. It always does. It's such a great ink. It works on all kinds of surfaces and I just love it. Okay, so now I want to do this again. So I'm bringing in another piece of watercolor paper and I want to create another one of these, and I want a pink bloom because I want that variation with the lilac, the Wild Dandelion, and the pink. So I'm just wiping that away again and adding a little bit of that picked raspberry. You could also use Passionate Pink. That's the one I normally grab, but I had the picked raspberry here, so I'm using that one. Now it's time to go ahead and work on the other embellishments that we're going to watercolor. So I've got the 3 main blooms from the set and I'm just stamping them down in 3 different colors. So the first one was in Picked Raspberry and the second one's in the Wilted Violet from the Oxide Ink. And the third one I'm going to do in the Wild Dandelion. So we're going to be watercoloring here with the Oxides and the dye-based inks. And I'm going to talk with you a little bit about the differences between the two. So I've got my water brush here and I just put a little bit of water down. Now the Oxides, that ink is still pretty wet. You could use regular Distress inks as well, but I really like the softness of the Distress Oxides. So I'm just pulling, since this bloom is really pretty big, I'm just pulling the color from the outside line art image and I'm pulling it in towards the center. So you get some like faux shadowing and different like values and hues of the color by just using what's there. Now you can see with the Picked Raspberry, it's not as intense and bright as the violet was. So I'm just kind of smushing a little bit into the lid here so that I can pick some up with the brush and just kind of add a little bit more in the layering here. Okay, so yeah, it still wasn't enough. So I'm just adding a little bit down to my craft mat and just picking it up, and I'm gonna go ahead and clean that off so I don't end up with it on my shirt or something else. Okay, so I'm digging these 2 blooms. Now I want to go ahead and create a forsythia-like bloom. So I'm going to use Wild Dandelion. I'm going to smash that down. Now, this is intense. Now, when you're working with the dye-based inks, and I've said this in other tutorials, you need to move quickly because they're going to dry super fast. And I really love painting with this dye ink, this Wild Dandelion. It's very much like a lemon yellow in a watercolor paint. So it's an exact match almost. So it's absolutely beautiful. Okay, loving the 3 colors that we've got going on here. I'm just going to give it a little bit of heat before I move on to some of the details for the center of these blooms. Now, because I did all that watercoloring and I kind of moved those colors around, I lost some of the detail to the center of my bloom that was in the original stamp. So I'm going to go ahead and over stamp that in using the Wild Lilac for this center floral. So you can see that it's going to add a lot of that center texture back in and give that flower some super duper pop. So I'm going to go back into the other 2. I'm going to clean off this stamp and I'm going to pull my Picked Raspberry and go ahead and do it again for that center of the pink floral, and then I'm going to also do it for the Wild Dandelion. So it's going to be a tone on tone, but because it's stamped over top, it does bring back some of that definition and give that flower more of a graphic look. So it's kind of just another little added element. And I pulled that part out into the stamp set so that you had the freedom to do that, to create new centers inside of your florals. Okay, so now it's time. I've got some of this purple tape, and I'm going to go ahead and just put the dies on all of the florals and run them through my die cutter. I have a Platinum 6 die cut, hand crank die cut machine here. You could use the one that you prefer, but I just love how these dies cut these images out so very well. And yes, you could fussy cut them and they will cut out very well with your scissors. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the 3 branch elements out, and they are amazing. So here are all the die cuts, and they cut out so clean and so crisp. And now I've got all of the pieces ready to assemble the center portion of the card, and trying to make some decisions on whether or not I'm going to use a sentiment or not, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm coming in a little bit closer. Before I add these elements to the card, I want to show you this fun little splatter technique that just kind of uses the Oxide inks. You could do this with the distress inks as well. Now I've got a mister here, and I am going to spray, just mist lightly onto the pad, this wilted violet pad, and you can see that the off spray of that is just splattering on top of this layer of the card, and I really kind of like that. Now I love doing splatter. I've created a stamp for you to do splatter, but this is a really fun way for you to do it as well. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and start laying in the die cuts and creating the foundation of the design for this card. Now, here's my tip when you've gotten to this part of the card. Commit. Commit to gluing and laying things down. Because if you move your embellishments around and you keep moving them around, it'll be like a couple hours later and you still not sure where you want to put it. So what I know that I want to do here with the design is I want to create this kind of angled V shape, that where the branches intersect, I'm going to put that large bloom. So I've got that in my mind as the overall concept of what I want to do. So now I'm just gluing and committing to getting all of those pieces down. And it's totally cool that they're just going to hang off the edge. I'm just going to trim those off. And I also wanted to share that I did take the watercolor piece that I've been working on, and I did put it on the jelly bean green cardstock base. Put that on first so that I can go ahead and lay in these embellishments. So I kind of futzed around a little bit with the placement of things, but once you get that first angle in and you know that your flower is going to be grounded at that intersection, you can commit to the rest pretty quickly. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim that off. I'm going to start to add the florals down. And I don't need a pop dot there or a pop square, because those 3 embellishments coming together kind of created quite a bit of lift there. And then I'm going to nest that forsythia-like piece just in with that one flower. So I've got those 2 flowers kind of nested together. And my pink flower, I'm just kind of playing around with a little bit, but I want to continue to create that look and feel of those flowers are falling. They have fallen and we've got branches. So I'm just keeping in mind that angle that I'm trying to create. Okay, so I did, and I committed to getting that little cherry blossom down there on the paper, off over to the right a little bit. So I'm pulling my wild lilac now, and I'm going to stamp in some of the branch elements, just some of the extra little pieces of greenery that are just going to help create these different textures and layers, because we have the fallen blooms at the bottom, and then we have all the die cuts that create a little bit of a dimension in the layer. And now I'm just doing a little bit of over stamping of some things to create just another level of visual interest. And adding these two little leaf elements here to just kind of add a little bit of green back to the top of that yellow and just kind of keep on creating a little bit of flow here. So it's got this kind of woodsy like feel, but it's got spring colors, and it looks like all of the flowers have just kind of fallen and they're laying on these beautiful branches. Okay, so yes, so I've got this angled look and feel here, and I'm really digging it. I'm going to go ahead and trim off those edges just so that we can kind of move along to the next step. And it's super simple. You can just kind of trim them off. And yeah, I'm digging this card. So here's the original inspiration over on the right. And I really just wanted to change it up, add a whole lot more spring color, and give this wonderful card to my sister-in-law for the Easter holiday. So loving how the dies don't add a ton of dimension to this card, but it's just so fun and super simple. And the sentiment isn't on the front of the card this time. You can just pop that sentiment on the inside and it would look amazing. I hope you enjoyed today's card tutorial. Thanks so much for joining me. Please consider sharing the joy by liking this video and subscribing to this channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.